You think you're buying a future, not realizing you're buying practice, she said, laughing as she slid the prenup across the kitchen island. By New Year's, I'll be booking Tuscany and you can pay for it. She said it like a toast, and in a way, she was toasting the plan she'd been cooking for 2 years. I remember the sound of the wine glass against the marble, the way the light from our Ring doorbell window caught the gold bracelet on her wrist. I remember thinking I was stupid then, but not in the way she meant. I thought, this woman has no idea who she's dealing with. You're being melodramatic, she replied when I asked her straight up if she'd been lying about her job. Why are you freaking out about a prenup? Relax. Relax. The word tastes like a joke now. I sat there, the prenup fluttering like a small, harmless flag between us. She smiled. She had that look I hated most, like she'd already counted my future. She didn't just want a marriage of convenience. She'd been building her side of the ledger while making sure I kept paying. By Christmas, I'll be sipping champagne in Tuscany with your money, she said, as if reciting a Christmas carol. But I had no idea what I was about to discover. Have you ever watched someone plan your life while you were the only one cheering? Have you ever caught a laugh that was actually a plan? Drop it in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only idiot who fell for that smile. The first hint came from something stupidly small. Our Tesla was missing one morning. Not the whole car, just the charging cable. She called it borrowed. Later, I found receipts for a $2,700 portable charger she'd bought in cash at a Seattle Target. Cash? She had always complained about online shopping like it gave her hives. It was a tiny red flag. Anyone who's been through a breakup remembers the small things. Friends laugh about the silly stuff later. But in the moment, each small lie stacks into a mountain. You're being dramatic, she said again when I confronted her about the cable. Relax, it's nothing. But then the pattern emerged. Little things became a trail. An Armani receipt tucked into a coat she never wore. GPS data showing frequent trips to Bellevue when she told me she was at her night class in Capitol Hill, and a mysterious consulting fee that hit our joint account in 3 separate 6-figure deposits. My hands were shaking the night I opened her phone. We'd had one of those fights that ends in silence, and she stormed out. I went to grab her charger, her keys, anything, and found her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. I'm not proud of it. I remember thinking, is this what suspicion feels like? A small electric taste in your fingertips? What I found were 47 deleted messages. 47 little cuts into the story she told me for 2 years. You'll never figure it out. He's too gullible, one message read. Just hold off filing until he transfers that property, another said, counting down to when. He signs the mortgage, then it's ours. 47 deleted messages backed up by her cloud. I won't post the screenshots here. Yes, I have them, but I remember each line like a thread on a sweater. I didn't confront her with those messages. Not yet. Instead, I did what anyone confused and clumsy in law would do. I called a lawyer. You're sure you want to pursue this? Margaret Chen asked the first time we met. Margaret had been practicing family law in Washington for 30 years. And I knew from the moment she walked in wearing a navy suit and an expression that said she'd seen both the ugly and the absurd, that she was going to be my chess partner. I just want the truth, I said. I want to know if she lied. Margaret smiled, not cruelly, but with that professional calm people pay for. David, if she has been intentionally transferring assets, hiding money, or otherwise dissipating the marital estate, you may have grounds not just to deny spousal support, but to undo those transfers. Undo? Like get it back? My voice rose, which was embarrassing. Like in the movies? This is Seattle, not a heist movie, she said. But yes, we can subpoena bank records, file for forensic accounting, and if there's a pattern of dissipation, we can ask the court to award you more than just a split. Sometimes judges order the dissipation repaid. Sometimes they adjust property division to reflect the misconduct. The word dissipation sounded like a good word. It was legalese for she spent the house. But then I saw the other images. Photos of her in Aspen at a party with a woman I'd never met. tagged in a post that said her uncle's family office managed an $847 million estate. She'd liked the post and commented, "Someday." Someday. 2 years of lies stretched thin over that someday. You won't believe what I found next. We hired a private investigator, pored over credit card statements, and demanded her email disclosures. The investigation turned up something even uglier. A web of LLCs with my name nowhere on them, leases held in her maiden name, and a consulting company that had moved $450,000 through accounts labeled as business expenses and vendor payments that were actually transfers to a shell company tied to her sister. She set up assets under the guise of a business, the investigator told me, flipping through a stack of printouts. Then she paid herself back as wages and rent. Classic asset protection. But there's a mistake. An account in her name got flagged because she used the same phone number we traced to ring footage from March 3rd. Ring footage? I asked. Yeah, he said. Your front door camera. It caught her in your driveway, 3 in the morning, carrying boxes down to a white van. She thought the cameras were offline. What happened next made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a pattern of greed. It was a coordinated plan to strip the marital estate and position herself as the less conspicuous partner while she quietly moved the cash and property into places she controlled. 2 years of lies, in receipts and transfers and late-night trips. She literally wrote, "He'll never suspect," Margaret said when I showed her the messages. And she was right until she wasn't. I started playing a dangerous game. Act like I was out of the picture. Slow, the sad beat-up partner who'd let the prenup go. Let her get cocky. Margaret called it letting the boat float. The theory, the more she spent, the more she showed her hand. She began to believe winning meant pushing me to a corner. There were setbacks, 3 in particular, that made me think I was about to lose before I even started. Setback 1. The bank froze when we subpoenaed records, saying data retention policies prevented them from releasing older transfers. "We can't produce what's been purged," their legal counsel said. I remember Margaret's jaw tightening. "Then we'll go higher," she said. "Subpoena the correspondent banks. Follow the wire." Setback 2. Just when we were about to file, she filed first. She filed for divorce and asked for a temporary spousal support order, labeling herself the less advantaged spouse and painting a picture of me as the high-earning, unsympathetic villain. Her lawyer, slick, expensive, Armani suits, and a laugh that sounded like it had been sharpened, made a show of being reasonable. "We just want the kids to have stability," he said on camera. He lied like breathing. Setback 3. She deleted more messages. She sold off a piece of her property overnight, weaving it through an LLC in Wyoming. The courts have a funny way of siding with appearances. Judges see the documents on paper. They don't always see the invisible wires and strings. But then we found something she didn't expect. A payroll document she forgot to scrub. Sent to her sister's consulting company from a Bellevue-based PR firm. An email confirmation that had no reason to exist. The PR firm had been paid from her consulting company, which in turn was paid out of the joint account while we were still married. The dates matched a ring footage window that showed her loading boxes into that van. Margaret called it a smoking receipt. I called it a miracle. By the time the temporary hearing rolled around in King County, she was radiant. She walked into the courtroom like she'd won. She was wearing the same gold bracelet from the prenup scene, a Chanel scarf, and a smile that deserved to be slapped off. Her lawyer was all charm. The bailiff announced them like royalty. "Your Honor," he said, with that confident, polished voice, "my client seeks a modest, temporary support while these proceedings are resolved. She is not a wealthy woman. She works nights as a PR consultant and needs help." "You mean she needs cash while she sips champagne in Tuscany?" I remember thinking. The hearing began with the usual routine. Margaret laid out timelines, circled dates, and explained the irregular transfers. She didn't grandstand. When she spoke like a surgeon. "We have records of transfers," she said. We have ring footage that shows Mrs. Hayes moving boxes from the primary residence to a rented storage unit on March 3rd at 3 a.m. We have 47 deleted messages recovered from a cloud backup indicating intent to conceal assets. We have payroll and wire confirmations that demonstrate a pattern of dissipation of the marital estate. 47 deleted messages, the judge repeated, eyes narrowing. 47. Yes, Margaret said, and those messages included texts that directly refer to awaiting the mortgage execution and counting down days until funds would be under her control. In court, numbers feel heavy. They hang in the air. 47 deleted messages felt like a verdict. Then the judge did something I hadn't expected. He asked to see the prenup. My heart dropped because the prenup had been a castle in our arguments. She'd always waved it like a flag of inevitability. But the prenup had a clause against dissipation, and Margaret had circled it the second we read it. This agreement, the judge began, contains a clause preventing either party from dissipating marital assets. Mrs. Hayes, did you understand that clause when you signed? Of course, she said. Yes, Your Honor. But, the judge said, holding up a folder of bank statements, invoices, and emails, your understanding isn't the point. The point is that there is a pattern of transfers. These maneuvers suggest intent. She bristled. Intent? That's an accusation. He's weaponizing. Please, her lawyer cut in. These are ordinary business transfers. Margaret smiled then, and I felt a strange warmth that wasn't revenge yet. It was relief. Business transfers that result in funds being funneled through shell corporations to family members are not typical business transfers. In our experience, she said, they look like efforts to misrepresent the marital estate. Judge, her lawyer said, these are desperate accusations from a man who— I'd like to hear Mr. Hayes, the judge interrupted. Counsel, please. I felt like I was underwater when I stood. I remember thinking wildly, don't sound like a man who needs pity. Don't let them see fear. But fear was a loud drum. My voice came out steady because Margaret had coached me on how to speak. I trusted her, I said. I trusted the woman I married. We bought our house, a $12 million house in Northeast Seattle, with documents in both our names. We used my credit to finance improvements. I worked long hours at the startup. She told me she was a consultant. She said the money she'd be paid was to help cover expenses. I didn't see the transfers. I didn't know. Mr. Hayes, the judge said softly, why are you here asking the court to deny her temporary support? Because she isn't the less advantaged spouse, Your Honor. I said, she is the one who set up this structure. I have evidence. Emails, ring footage, payroll confirmations, bank wires. She moved assets out of our joint accounts, purchased property through LLCs, and billed my credit card for business expenses that were then siphoned back out. I have 47 deleted messages that show she coordinated this with her sister to wait until I signed the mortgage. The courtroom air felt like compressed metal. Her cheeks flushed. She mouthed something to her attorney. He whispered back. Mr. Hayes, the judge said, we'll review the documents. Ms. Hayes, did you transfer any assets to your sister's business? She started, then stopped. The pause was long, the kind that announces the real answer. Margaret stood then and walked to the bench, methodical and calm. Your Honor, we request a temporary restraining order on transfers, and that her claim for temporary support be denied. Furthermore, we ask the court to consider that if the undisclosed control of funds is proven, the spouse controlling those funds may have a duty to support the other. A pause. Duty to support the other. The phrase hung like thunder. In these courts, money rarely moves quickly, but sometimes the law is clearer than common sense. Whoever has the means supports the one who doesn't. Little did they know, the judge would not just deny her support, he would flip the script. When the judge announced his interim order, the room leaned in like a crowd in a theater. Given the evidence presented, he said, including the 47 texts recovered, bank transfers on dates corresponding with the ring footage indicating removal of property from the marital home, and the shell entities identified in subpoenaed records, the court finds a credible likelihood of dissipation of marital assets. As such, temporary support will be withheld from Ms. Hayes. Furthermore, the court finds that Ms. Hayes currently controls sufficient assets and income to render support to Mr. Hayes. Therefore, the court orders, on an interim basis, that Ms. Hayes provide temporary spousal support to Mr. Hayes in the amount of $8,500 per month pending full discovery. The ring of the word support shifted the room. I remember Margaret's eyes closing for a heartbeat, then opening in fierce calculation. My ex-wife's face collapsed like someone had taken away the rug. Her mouth moved without sound. Her lawyer turned white, like he'd just realized the verdict in a magic trick. "You're what?" she whispered later. When we were escorted out into the hall, the bracelet clinked. She was a portrait of just one arrogance blown to confetti. "Your Honor," her lawyer had sputtered at the bench. But then the judge spoke with a clarity that felt like a blade. "If you believe the court's order is in error after full discovery," he said, "you may petition for modification. But for now, the order stands." She had thought she would walk away with my house, or at least with a settlement that left her wealthy and me embarrassed and penniless. Instead, the court had temporarily recognized the funds in her control and on an interim basis ordered her to pay me support. This was not a final judgment. This was not the courtroom's last word. But it was a turn so deliciously precise it made my throat burn. Was I relieved? Absolutely. Was I satisfied? Not yet. There were still months of discovery, depositions, and a final hearing to go. We had to prove the transfers legally constituted dissipation and that the LLCs were for her benefit. There would be more stress tests, subpoenas resisted, accountants stonewalling, per lawyer filing for protective orders. There would be times I thought we'd lose. Do you think the court always gets it right? Would you have kept pushing? Tell me in the comments. The months after the interim order were an all-consuming blur. My inbox filled with discovery responses, Margaret grilled forensic accountants, and the PI dug into receipts from an Aspen vacation that claimed to be work-related. We found an Airbnb paid for in cash. Photos of her at a charity gala in Bellevue wearing couture that matched a $12,000 invoice, and texts where she celebrated closing on something she never told me about. The defense tried every trick. They claimed the transfers were gifts. They claimed independent family trusts provided funds, and they produced fake invoices. There were moments when the bank said files had been lost in migration, and moments when our own legal team argued internally about whether to accept a settlement. I remember the night when a mediator offered $200,000 to settle, and I almost walked away. $200,000 would have felt like survival. But then, in discovery, we got an email thread between her and her sister. Once the mortgage is signed, we move it. It was dated the week I signed my name. It was an admission written in full English, not euphemisms. That email was a boom. At trial, we played the ring footage. There she was, at 3 in the morning, carrying boxes. We played the 47 messages. We had wire confirmations. Margaret cross-examined like a sculptor chipping away at a facade. Her sister took the stand and invoked privilege until the judge ripped through the privilege claim like tissue. The accountant they had propped up cracked under pressure and admitted there were informal transfers. "You told me to wait 3 more months," the sister said, looking down. "It was meant to be temporary." Temporary, the lawyer said, and the word meant they thought they'd cheated a system that only punished the poor. My ex-wife tried to cry on the stand, but her tears had the shape of theater. We'd seen them before in the photos of her at the Aspen dinner. The judge wasn't moved. "When you create a structure with the purpose of concealing the marital estate," the judge said, "courts will not enforce that structure to the detriment of the innocent spouse. The prenup does not protect fraudulent transfers." Then came the line that made every friend who'd told me to divorce and run send me memes for a week. "Ms. Hayes," the judge said, This court finds that you intentionally concealed assets and misrepresented your financial position. Therefore, not only is your claim for spousal support denied, but this court orders a reallocation of marital funds. On the basis of current disclosures and the evidence presented, Ms. Hayes shall pay alimony to Mr. Hayes in the amount of $8,500 per month, retroactive to the date of the temporary order, pending final calculation. The courtroom made that slow inhale you hear in movies. She looked like she'd been struck. Her lawyer's expression was an open wound. "You're asking me to pay him?" she cried, half laughing, half hysterical. "How is that even legal?" "It is legal," the judge said. "Alimony is determined by need and ability to pay. Your ability to pay has been demonstrated." By the time the verdict was formally entered, her mother had called to see if she was okay, and by the following week, a Bellevue gossip thread had already titled her "The Gold Digger Who Lost." Social media is a beast that eats dramatic irony at breakfast. I saw comments from people who had known her in college, people who'd seen her at charity events. My inbox filled with messages, some supportive, some cruel, some curious. Was it justice? I don't know if the law is justice, but it felt like consequence. I'd been humiliated. I'd been lied to. The judge had made the courtroom an instrument of accountability. Months later, she moved into a smaller condo in Bellevue and started a boutique job at a local store, selling clothes she used to buy without thinking. I walked past the window once and caught sight of that gold bracelet, now duller, and her eyes flicked away. Meanwhile, I started dating Sarah, a patent attorney who laughed when I told her I was technically broke. "A man who can orchestrate something that sophisticated," she said over coffee, "is never really broke. He's just creatively liquid." Weirdly, the weirdest part of all this wasn't the money. It was that the process forced me to know my own limits. I wasn't perfect. I didn't act perfectly. I spied on a phone. I let myself be duped by charm. I almost took a settlement that would have kept me quiet. But the choice to keep going, to pull wires until something fragile broke, I'm not sure I'd recommend that to everyone. Tell me, was I wrong to push it this far? Would you have settled? I'd love to hear what you think. There are still scars. I still check our old ring footage sometimes, like an addict checking a chart. But I also have documents that say I wasn't a sap. The court's order is public record if you're curious. Look up King County case number 2024-XXXX. I have the screenshots, the invoices, the emails. They are literally receipts for 2 years of being lied to. People ask me now if I regret revenge. Here's the thing. I don't think of it as revenge anymore. I think of it as collecting truth and turning it into an account balance. The part of me that wanted to be humbled was humbled. The part of me that wanted accountability felt vindicated. People on Reddit called me names in the early days. Some said I'd gone too far. Some said the law had finally done a thing they wished it would do more often. What would I change? Maybe I wouldn't have waited so long to listen to the small red flags, the missing charger, the borrowed receipts. Maybe I would have asked questions sooner. Maybe I wouldn't have let the prenup make me passive. But once the game was on, I wouldn't have traded the outcome for anything. A life lesson without being preachy? Okay, here's mine. Trust people, but verify the receipts. And when someone counts your future for you, make sure you're watching the ledger. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me which step you would have taken sooner, or if you think I crossed a line. Some people think I went too far. What do you think? If you liked this story and want to hear more true tales of deception, revenge, and the sometimes ugly truth of modern relationships, subscribe and hit that bell. I've got dozens more like this one.